Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Today we're taking a closer look at an issue that continues to create economic pressure inside Iraq's financial system: the unofficial exchange rate of the Iraqi dinar and the challenges it is creating for the broader economy. While official policies from Iraq's monetary authorities establish a formal exchange rate, the reality on the ground often tells a more complex story. The presence of an unofficial or parallel market rate is something economists monitor closely because it can reveal underlying tensions in a country's financial system. In Iraq's case, the unofficial exchange rate has been described as elevated, meaning the dinar appears weaker in the parallel market than it does under the official government rate. When analysts say the rate is high in this context, they are referring to the number of dinars required to obtain $1. A higher number means the dinar is weaker, and that difference between the official rate and the street rate can create significant economic distortions. To understand why this matters, it's important to first understand how exchange rate systems work in countries like Iraq. Iraq operates under a managed exchange rate framework where the central bank influences the value of the currency through policies, auctions, and control of foreign currency reserves. The official rate is typically maintained through these mechanisms, allowing businesses and financial institutions to operate under a predictable currency value. However, when demand for foreign currency increases beyond what the official system can easily supply, a parallel or unofficial market often develops. In that market, currency traders and businesses exchange dinars for dollars outside of the formal banking channels. The rate in that market is determined purely by supply and demand, and if dollars are scarce, the price of dollars rises relative to the dinar. That appears to be part of the situation currently causing concern. Reports suggest the unofficial rate is significantly higher than what policymakers would prefer, and that gap is creating pressure throughout different sectors of the Iraqi economy. When such a gap widens, it often signals that demand for US dollars inside the country is stronger than the supply being provided through official channels. Several factors can contribute to this imbalance. One of the most common is import demand. Iraq relies heavily on imports for many consumer goods, food products, industrial materials, and technology. Importers need US dollars to pay international suppliers, and when access to official dollar channels becomes slower or more regulated, businesses may turn to the parallel market to secure the currency they need. Another contributing factor can be financial regulations or compliance procedures that tighten the flow of dollars through the banking system. In recent years, Iraqi authorities have implemented reforms aimed at strengthening transparency in international transactions and improving oversight of cross-border financial flows. These reforms are important for financial stability and international cooperation, but during the adjustment period, they can sometimes create temporary friction in currency availability. When businesses face delays or restrictions in obtaining dollars through official banking channels, the parallel market becomes more active. Increased demand in that market pushes the unofficial rate higher, which translates into a weaker dinar outside the formal system. For everyday citizens, this dynamic can have very real consequences. A weaker dinar in the parallel market can contribute to higher prices for imported goods. Since Iraq imports a large share of its consumer products, fluctuations in the exchange rate often feed into domestic inflation. Businesses that purchase dollars at a higher unofficial rate must pass those additional costs along the supply chain, and ultimately consumers may feel the impact through rising prices. This is one reason why Iraqi monetary authorities pay close attention to the gap between the official rate and the parallel rate. Maintaining stability in the exchange rate is considered essential for economic confidence, investment planning, and price stability. When the difference becomes too large, it can signal that corrective policy actions may be needed. Those policy responses can take several forms. Central banks often attempt to increase the supply of dollars through official channels to meet demand more effectively. In Iraq's case, that can involve adjustments to foreign currency auction mechanisms or improvements in the banking system's ability to process international payments. By ensuring that legitimate businesses can access foreign currency through regulated pathways, authorities aim to reduce reliance on the parallel market. Another potential approach involves strengthening the domestic financial infrastructure. Expanding digital banking systems, improving compliance mechanisms, and increasing transparency in financial transactions can all help bring more currency activity back into the formal banking sector. Over time, these structural reforms can reduce the influence of informal currency markets. From a broader economic perspective, the presence of a strong parallel market often reflects deeper structural challenges. Economies that rely heavily on imports and a single major export commodity can experience recurring currency pressures. In Iraq's case, oil exports provide the vast majority of government revenue and foreign currency inflows. While oil revenue can supply large amounts of dollars to the economy, fluctuations in oil prices or administrative bottlenecks in distribution can still create short-term mismatches between supply and demand. Diversification of the economy is often discussed as a long-term solution to this issue. As Iraq continues to develop sectors beyond oil, such as agriculture, manufacturing, and services, the country may gradually build a more balanced economic structure. Increased domestic production reduces reliance on imports, which in turn can decrease pressure on foreign currency demand. For followers of the Iraqi dinar, developments in the unofficial exchange rate are important to monitor, but they should always be viewed within the broader context of Iraq's economic policy framework. A temporary divergence between official and unofficial rates does not necessarily indicate a permanent shift in currency policy. Instead, it often reflects short-term liquidity pressures or transitional adjustments within the financial system. In the short term, Iraqi authorities are likely focused on narrowing the gap between the official and parallel rates. This can involve improving access to dollars for legitimate trade, strengthening banking compliance procedures, and continuing financial sector reforms that increase transparency. Stabilizing the exchange rate environment is a key priority because it supports both domestic economic stability and international investor confidence. Over the longer term, sustained currency stability will depend on structural reforms within the Iraqi economy. Expanding the private sector, improving financial governance, and strengthening non-oil industries can gradually reduce the types of pressures that lead to large parallel market gaps. These reforms take time, but they play a critical role in building a resilient monetary system. It is also worth noting that exchange rate management is a complex process even in highly developed economies. Many countries around the world experience periods where unofficial markets appear or where currency pressures emerge due to global financial conditions. What matters most is how policymakers respond and whether institutions remain committed to long-term stability and reform. For Iraqi dinar observers, the key takeaway from the current discussion around the unofficial rate is that it highlights ongoing adjustments within Iraq's financial system rather than providing a clear signal of immediate currency revaluation or dramatic policy change. Exchange rate dynamics are influenced by many variables, including trade flows, regulatory policies, global financial conditions, and domestic economic reforms. Understanding these factors helps provide a more balanced perspective on what currency developments truly mean. While fluctuations in unofficial rates can create challenges within the economy, they are also issues that policymakers actively work to address through monetary policy tools and structural reforms. As always, staying informed with credible economic analysis is the best approach when following developments related to the Iraqi dinar and Iraq's broader economic landscape. If you want to continue receiving responsible and factual updates about the Iraqi dinar and Iraq's economy, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And remember, this content is provided for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.